Hello, lovely friends. Welcome to the end of June. I keep having to think about what month we're in, what year we're in. It's all a bit, I don't know what's happened. Now, this is thoughts on month 50. Oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm at the 50th month of being without a wage. The astute amongst you, those of you who've been with me for a while, and are accustomed to the rhythms and the flow of my videos. Some of you, and I know because you messaged me to check in on me, see if I was okay, thank you. Some of you noticed that there was no thoughts on month 49 at the end of May. The OCD in me is kind of like, I wish I had. That kind of completionist thing. Completionist? I don't know what the word is. Yeah, there was no month 49. There was a month 49 for me. Of course there was. I did live throughout the whole of May. Hang on a tick, I need a slug of water. Look, the thing is, we were getting towards the end of May, getting into the last few days of May, and because I've had this schedule for 4 years now, I was thinking, right, I was looking at my schedule thinking, when can you film your thoughts on? Because I don't always film it on the last day, apart from the fact that my internet can be a bit unreliable, so I quite often film it the day before the last day in order to have it ready to go public on the last day. So it's usually within the last 3 or 4 days of the month. I sit down here in my thoughts on chair in the corner by my books, have a little chat about how that month has gone, reflect on things in general. And usually, actually always, as the month goes on, there's almost always a sort of a theme emerging from that month. And as we go into those last few days of the month, that theme becomes more apparent. And I think, great, that's the hook to hang this month's video on, as it were. But honestly, May was such a crazy month in the end. As you all know, because I've banged on about it enough. I'm sorry I've banged on about it, but it was a major deal to me. This whole thing of the garden being so behind, because I'd missed March and half of April. I'd never been in such a pickle with the garden before. Even last year with compost gate and drought, I wasn't in so much of a pickle. So as we were heading into those last few days of May, it was almost like I had no space to think, because literally every day I was getting up in the morning and the to-do list was just never ending, mostly the garden. But because I was having to spend so much time in the garden to catch the garden up, other things were falling by the wayside and getting neglected. So that kind of list of things was getting bigger and bigger each day, and I just felt this horrible bombardment of pressure of things that needed my attention, things and people. I was so tired physically, and I think that physical tiredness was starting to make me mentally tired too. So as we came into these last few days of May, I was thinking, when am I going to get a chance to film? The filming isn't difficult or time consuming particularly. I chat for 20 minutes, half an hour, sometimes 40 minutes. I've got to keep an eye on the clock today. I don't want to be too long. That's not the time consuming bit. The time consuming bit is everything that comes afterwards in terms of editing, rendering, uploading to YouTube, the YouTube edits, all those bits and pieces. Anyway, so I just was thinking I couldn't see when I was going to be able to fit it in without ending up sort of doing it at midnight, being up till 4 a.m. To do all the edit bit. It's like, I can't, I'm too exhausted. But also in terms of what am I going to talk about, my brain was so bamboozled that there was no clarity on any kind of reflection. And I was really, to be honest, I was a bit maudlin about things. I was feeling really quite down. And generally, well, you know me by now, even if I'm down, I like to find the positive. I like to find the positive spin on things, because if you just focus on the down, boy, oh boy, what a weight. So I think it was about 3 days before the end of the month, and I just thought to myself, don't do it, skip it. And I know this is going to sound so daft to people, but it really bothered me. It bothered me because I've never not done it since I started my channel. But I had to be practical, I had to be realistic. There was no time to do it. And even if I'd squeezed it in somehow, I just don't think it would have been a particularly productive or positive exercise. So here's the thing, and this is how we've kind of come into this month. I think it was the Sunday, so it must 30 days, have September, April, June and November. 30th of May, it was the Sunday, I think. I think Monday was the last day of May, and I think that was the bank holiday. But anyway, on the Sunday, yes, it was the first day of Roland Garros, the tennis, the French Open. Don't worry, I'm not about to go on one about tennis, although I kind of am, because it's my analogy. I'd been in the garden all day again. I'd come home tired, in pain again, and just feeling really overwhelmed. That's what it was. I was feeling really overwhelmed. I was feeling a little bit sorry for myself, if I'm honest, and it's just, actually, I was being a bit pathetic. I needed a bit of a slap. So I came home and I put the computer on, and I straight away tuned the computer into Roland Garros, as it were. And I just sort of sat, I flopped for a few minutes. So like I said, it was the first day of Roland Garros. It must have been about maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm not sure. But the match that was playing was Zverev. I can never say his name. I can say Tsitsipas just fine, but Zverev. And he was 2 sets down. Now, this guy is a great player. It's the first match. You know, he should go, I was going to say a cliche there, and I was going to do a journalist cliche. He should go deep into the tournament. They always go deep into the tournament, don't they? They either crash out or they cruise through. There's no in between. Anyway, he was 2 sets down. Now, for any of you who don't watch tennis, don't worry, I'm not going to bore you completely with it, but at the Grand Slams, it's best of 5 sets. The rest of the year on the tour, it's best of 3 sets. So if it's another day on the regular tour, that would be it. He would have lost, he'd be out. 2 sets down, you think, the guy is going to go out. But because it's best of 5, you have to win 3 sets to win. And he blimmin' well turned it around. He turned it around. I'm going to get emotional, not because of him, because of me. Yeah, he turned it around. So he won sets number 3, 4 and 5, which meant he won the game and carried on and went deep into the tournament. And it just struck me what a great analogy that was for myself in that moment. I've talked about sport on a number of occasions and how, I mean, I love it. I'm sports mad. But how I often use sport as an analogy for me to get myself out of tricky situations, whether it's me getting myself out of a mental, trough. I'm suddenly inarticulate. Yeah, to get out of that kind of, if I go really low, mentally, or, you know, even physically sometimes. I think about sports people and when they've had injuries and how hard they work to recover and come back to their work without that kind of feeling sorry for themselves. They get on with the work and come back. So this 2 sets down, and I was thinking, you know, Vivi, that's where you're at the end of May. You're 2 sets down. With the garden, with life in general, with stuff I'm doing outside of YouTube and all these other things, I was 2 sets down. But what that meant, as I told myself, is I haven't lost yet. I haven't quite lost. I'm clinging on with the tips of my fingers. All I need to do is win the next set. It doesn't matter how I do it. It doesn't matter how ugly I play. I don't mean ugly as in nasty, like cheating. I mean ugly as in I don't care what I look like. I don't care how much I have to scrabble to the back of the court to, you know, lob someone or whatever it is. Just win the next set. So that's kind of how I sort of did a 180 in my mind of, okay, let's see this as a challenge. Let's see June as the next 3 sets, as it were. So in that first week of June, well, I'd hoped to turn the garden around in that first week of June. I showed you the tour right at the beginning of June, and it actually took me 2 weeks to turn the garden around, to get it to where I wanted it to be. But I would say in that first week of really, really working hard at it, but still trying to juggle everything else that's going on outside of the garden, I won that 3rd set, but I won it on a tiebreaker. I only just won it, but I won it because I got the squash in the ground. I got the tomatoes in the ground. I hadn't got the bean arches up. I hadn't got the beans in the ground yet. That was going to be the 4th set. It's fine. I won the 3rd set, and it gave me a bit of breathing space. It gave me a bit of confidence. So the rest of this month has been about, well, should I say, the next 2 weeks of June, in other words, the 2nd week and the 3rd week, I kind of treated them like the 4th set and the 5th set. And yay! I won both sets. So in the end, I won 3 sets. So in the end, I've won the match. Yay! I haven't won the tournament, though. So that's where I'm at now at the end of June. I would say at the end of May, I was pretty much nosediving, mentally and emotionally. And physically, just broken, really, really broken. But I've clung on just about. I've dragged myself back into the game. I've hung in, and I've done, in a way, June has been, do the bare essentials to sort of stay in there, as it were. So right now, it's like, yeah, I won that match, but there's going to be another 4 or 5 matches to come if I'm going to win the whole tournament. So I haven't actually done any gardening for 9 or 10 days or so. Yeah, it was a week Saturday ago. I was down there, did my broad bean harvest, did my tomato cares, did a load of weeding because we'd had a load of rain. I didn't want to do the weeding that day, but I did because the ground was soft. It makes sense to do it. Then we just had a load of rain days, but you'll have seen by now, those are the days I did, for instance, my A Day in the Life of video, that little 2-parter. That was the Sunday. Monday was another day, virtually the same, a really, really long day. It was raining. Then I had 3 lovely days away, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, in my social bubble with Richard and Paul, which was gorgeous. The sun shone, which was lovely. Got to have some tinker time in Paul's garden, which was an absolute treat. And then since then, literally back home, it's been non-stop here again. So I just haven't had a chance to garden. And I made a bit of a list this morning thinking about the different jobs I think need doing in the garden, which ones are priorities. Just thinking about it in terms of, we are having quite a few rain days. So just trying to plan in my mind, okay, if I've only got one dry day, what are the priority jobs in the garden to do on that one dry day? I've got loads to do indoors. That's not an issue. I've got plenty to keep me going in here. Sorry, my mind is a little bit all over the place today. I'm still a bit tired up here and here. One of the things that's been really evident to me in the last couple of months, and even though I didn't reflect on it at the end of May with you all, I can reflect on it a little bit now, is this year has not gone how I'd like it to so far, both in terms of being on top of things in the garden, being on top of sewing, doing sewing, needle and thread sewing for my shop, things like that. Obviously there was a hiccup at the beginning of March, and that continues, the waves of that hiccup are continuing. Now, you know, in life we don't get a do-over. I can't sort of say, oh, I wish I could go back and go back to the beginning of March and redo it. Obviously I can't do that. Likewise, it will be a real waste of time and energy to just be maudlin about it, moan about it, self-pity oneself about it. There's no point in doing any of that, because that won't change anything either. What I can do is say to myself, okay, if you had this year, these 6 months all over again, what would you do differently? In a way, ever since I started doing these thoughts on at the end of each month for the channel, that's been a big part of it. It's been a big part of me learning how to be in this new life I've made for myself, is to have time to reflect, to say, what worked well? It's really important as well that we don't just focus on what didn't work. Focus on what did work. Why did it work? What was it that I did? What was my input to make that thing work well? Is that something I can replicate? And usually, yes, it is. And if something didn't work well, was there something I could have done to make it work better? You know, sometimes things don't work well because it feels like it's external events that have happened and come at us, and we could easily feel like, oh, well, I've got no control over that, I can't control it. But actually, even with external things coming at us, I think we can have some element of control about them. How we respond to these external events, we can control. We can either let these external things overwhelm us and panic us, etc., or we can sort of stand up to them and say, okay, you're coming into my life, how can I best deal with you? How can I deal with this event without it completely taking over every part of my life? I don't know that I'm making much sense, but yeah, I can't go back to the beginning of the year and start again. Of course I can't. But what I can do is think about the first 6 months of next year. And because a huge part of my life is about the garden and the seasons and the rhythm of that, I can plan for next year. You know, in most of life, in friendships, relationships, other parts of my work, I can't plan for it, of course not. But with the garden, I can, because okay, the weather's a bit different every year and we have to be slightly flexible because of that. But essentially, I know that by the beginning of June, I need to be at such and such a stage with the garden. So to be at that stage in the garden at the beginning of June, I need to be at this stage at the beginning of May. And to be at this stage at the beginning of May, beginning of April, working backwards. So I've mentioned this in a couple of videos, sort of through May and beginning of June. I have done that this year. I've gone backwards to see where I mucked up by not being in the garden at all in March, and how perhaps I could have managed that situation a bit better. I was dealing with a lot for Auntie Teapot and sort of with the family and everything. That was partly time consuming because I've never had to deal with that situation before, and so it's not a case of, I can't make a list of a to-do list and say, right, do this, do this, do this. I was kind of wandering around blind, spending a lot of time finding out what I need to do before I then go and do it. Anyway, the point is, there's no do-overs. The best we can do from a not great situation is learn from it. Even the bad stuff, to say, how could I have done it better? And if I'm in that situation again, hopefully I will have learned and I can apply that learning and manage things better further down the line. And for me, one of the things that always goes out of the window, and I know this, it's just time. It's that thing of always trying to do too much in too little time. So, for example, next spring, I know that when we get into March, and you'd think after 4 and a bit years of doing this, I'd know it by now, but it's really cemented for me this year. From March, the garden is absolutely the priority. I have to spread it out over March, April, May. I can't do it in May like I did this year. I have to spread it out because of my body. And spreading out, that'll be fine. I can manage it. And then if I spread the garden out, slot other things in between. The winter, that's my time for managing sewing and needle and thread sewing. This, where I'm at the moment, feeling a bit behind in the garden again. I think hopefully a couple of days now at the end of June to do all those finishing bits ought to mean that through July and August I get to the stage where the garden can just do itself. Apart from if I have to water, we're getting rain at the moment, doing the tomato cares, doing little bits of harvesting, little bits of weeding, but nothing big. None of this kind of full day in the garden. So that means, and this is the plan, that hopefully through July and August I can focus on other stuff like needle and thread sewing. Focus on really simple things like me, my own health, making sure I'm doing batch cooking and making sure I've got good meals to eat throughout the week. So I feel it's been a funny 2 months, May and June, but now here we are at the end of June. I feel really positive again. I'm not going to say I feel on top of things and in control, because I don't think I'm ever going to feel that though. But I do feel more like, I don't want to jinx myself. I feel like I'm just on the cusp of now I'm going to dictate how my day goes instead of my day dictating it to me, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was definitely a 5-setter, but I won the 5-setter. And now I'm off to play the next match. And who knows, maybe by the end of the year I will feel like I've won the tournament. I'm going to lift up the Rose Bowl. Wimbledon fans will get that one. So yeah, I think all in all, really positive. the garden's doing its thing. I'm really glad, I can't remember when this was, I think it was the beginning of June. I'm really glad I just decided on that day when the carrot bed was doing nothing to just say, you know what, stuff it. Just plant something else in, plant anything. Where there's a gap, just shove something in there. Brilliant. Let the garden grow and get back to that time of enjoying it at a much more gentle pace. Get on with other things. I've really, really missed sewing, needle and thread sewing. I've made a couple of things right at the end of this month as gifts for friends. I've got a few more gifts to make. I'll be getting on with those. At some point, I'd love to bring you along for a sewing video. I never promise it though, because to be honest, I get a bit concentrated when I'm doing it. But yeah, I've also got ideas for some other things I'd like to do for myself, purely for myself. No camera, nothing, just stuff for me. Some dressmaking, maybe. I haven't done any dressmaking for years, absolute years. I've had things that I've adjusted and repaired from the charity shops, but not actually made a garment for myself. So, yeah, it's been all work and no play. So I think doing some dressmaking will count as play. I'm excited about that. Right, I'm going to wrap things up because I have to go somewhere and do something. Just no time ever at the moment. But it's all good. I'm busy, I'm fulfilled, I'm kept out of mischief, just about. July's my birthday month. I've got a feeling I might be getting into some mischief in July. I'll do that privately though. All right, my lovelies, I'm going to leave it there for today. Happy end of June, everybody. I hope you're all doing okay and you're feeling on top of things. And remember, even if we can't have a do-over, if you're in a rubbish place at the moment, just think of it as you've lost the first 2 sets, but you can win the next 3. You can. You really can. So the next time I see you will be, no doubt will be in the garden, hopefully, if the rain stops. So until then, please look after yourselves and each other. That's really important. Bye for now, everyone.